It's 8 o'clock on April 4th, 2023, and the polls here in Chelmsford have now closed. I'm Kelly Beatty, along with Glenn Thoren. We're here to give you live updates on the election results here in town, on the annual spring election-a-thon. And, you know, it's been an interesting run-up to this election, Glenn. We have a couple of contested races. But I want to start and go back to all of the races that are not contested, and we're going to start with the town meeting reps, right?
Start with the good news.
Really. You know, we recently changed
Yeah.
from having 9 precincts in town to 11, and with that came a change to there are now more places to vote. Nobody has the same precinct they had before. But you know, this time of year we vote to elect town meeting representatives that represent us at annual town meeting in the spring and fall. And I was puzzled, saddened in some cases. We have these 11 precincts. Precinct 1, Precinct 5, Precinct 7, each had only 2 people running for 5 seats. And Glenn, we were talking a little bit earlier about what causes people to want to step forward and give back to the town. You've been observing this for a long time. What's your take?
Well, years ago you had generally more people running than there were seats available. When there were more than 5 seats, there would be 6 seats up every time you had an election because there were fewer precincts. But today it seems that there's less interest in serving in town government from the population in town, and I'm not sure why that is, but it is an area we should be concerned about because all that happens within the town having to do with the tax rates, tax rate differentials, and everything that comes through the town meeting is decided by town meeting. The Board of Selectmen doesn't decide it, and the Planning Board doesn't decide it, the school committee doesn't decide it.
FinCom doesn't decide it.
FinCom doesn't decide it. They give their opinions. Then it comes to the town meeting reps to vote on it. So if you really want to make a change in the town, you have to be in one of those seats in order to have a voice.
Right. And we'll come back to this a little bit later. This evening, we're unlikely to be able to give you the town meeting rep results, but since there was really only 1 precinct, 2 precincts, I'm sorry, where there was a contested.
I was going to say we probably can make a pretty good guess.
Of who's going to get elected.
When there's 2 people running for 5 seats, who's going to win?
Right. So. But let's turn to the elected positions, and that same sort of theme you see reflected here. This is the time of year when we have elections for the key boards and on our town, the select board, the school committee, the planning board, library trustees, cemetery commission, and so forth. And really only 2, there are candidates for all of these, of course, but in only 2 cases are those positions what we would call contested, where there are more people running.
What about library? Double check library there, because I think there might have been 3 for 2 seats.
There are 3 for 3 seats.
3 seats, okay.
3 for 3 seats, ding. So let's start with the select board. We have an incumbent, Ken Lefebvre, who is, so the select board is 5 people, and they have staggered terms. So every year, somebody gets a new election for them, 2 and 2 and then 1. This is the 1 year. There's only 1 incumbent, or only 1 seat up for grabs, and the incumbent is running for that seat. And there were 3 challengers, which was kind of interesting. There's kind of a story here in terms of how people came to run for the select board. It's a really important position.
It is a very important position, and if you have 1 seat, and a single seat election is the toughest election to get into, mainly because the person that's sitting in that seat has name recognition. And having been involved with a lot of elections in Chelmsford for many years, very clearly when you have an incumbent in the position, and there are some exceptions, but they're rare, people that know their name and are going to go out and vote, when they get in the ballot box, they think, now, has this person done something that's obviously, not in my best interest, so I got to find somebody else to vote for, or they go in doing their duty voting, and they see a name they recognize and can't think of anything wrong, they'll vote for that person. Mm-hmm. And so the power of the incumbency is very, very strong. And it turned out that, Ken was probably the last person to pull papers there. All the others had pulled the papers, gotten the signatures, returned the papers, and I think Ken pulled his on the last day. Mm-hmm. So there were already 3 people running, and then Ken, as the incumbent, pulled his papers. But he's got a very preferred position going into the ballot box.
And to your point, It's not as if there's the huge groundswell that Ken is doing an awful job on the board,
No.
select board, and these other three people have, think they can do a better job. They've stepped forward and said, I want to give back. I think it's my time. I think I'm qualified to be on the select board. And maybe they thought, because Ken hadn't pulled papers yet, maybe they thought it was going to be an open seat.
A couple of them thought exactly that, and so they pulled papers and thought they'd be competing against each other, and they ended up competing against the incumbent, but that happens often in local races.
And the other contested board is the planning board, which we're going to spend a little bit of time with later on because it's turning out to be one of the more spotlight intense situations right now with having to do with development plans here in town. We have 3 people running for 2 seats and only 1 incumbent. And so there will be a new face on the planning board.
There will be a new face, maybe 2,
Yep,
but there'll be at least 1 new face. And the interesting thing is we've had a very, very what should I say, engaging and contentious discussion about the River Neck Road project. And when I saw what was going on in that project and how long the discussion was continuing, I went to those meetings so I can understand, why is this project getting all the attention that it's getting? First of all, it was a huge building. It was an enormous building on the Old Mercury computer site. And it had issues that very much perturbed the local residents. The size of the building, for one, because it towered over any of the neighborhood buildings that some streets go right up to the building. And the neighbors across the street knew that there would be much more traffic going in and out of that, so they had a problem with that. So the planning board gave the Davis Company, who are the developers, a lot of opportunity to bring in their plans in a variety of forms. But one of the things that remained difficulty was the traffic on River Neck Road and the big trucks and the ancillary trucks that would be going into the facility. So the Davis Company decided to remedy that by using an emergency access lane that went through Apollo Drive and make it into a 2-lane road where tractor-trailer trucks will be traveling that road from 5 in the morning till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, with obviously the fumes that tractor-trailer trucks emit, the noise, the sound from early in the morning till very, very late at night that perturbed the neighborhood. So the neighbors got even more concerned that they were converting a never used, hardly ever used emergency access road into a 2-lane truck highway. So you had 2 problems that were major with that particular River Neck Road project was the size of the building and the traffic. And the neighbors came in and presented innumerable good arguments about why that's not the right thing to do, especially since that emergency access road was meant to be forever only an emergency access road. However, that was not written down in the plans. So one argument would be, well, they didn't specifically say it should forever remain that way, but that's the way it was designed. That's the way the discussions went originally. So again, the neighbors maintain that, opposition to the project. And after I started getting more closely engaged with that, I just went back to, what is the mission of the planning board? Right in the beginning of the statements for the planning board mission is to protect the neighborhoods, maintain the neighborhoods as they are without disturbing them, and to maintain the character of the town. Well, this particular project, in my opinion, failed on both counts significantly, especially when they put that truck traffic behind Monmouth Road, which is a street there. And so, I didn't know why that was continuing for so long. And Mike Raisbeck, to his credit, called for a straw vote. While Davis was there presenting how would you vote on the planning board if the vote was taken today? And the vote was, I think it was 4-2 against it, and you really had to have 5 votes in favor of it in order for it to pass. So it became obvious that the planning board, after hearing all that they heard for many, many months, probably 6 months longer than they needed to, decided this doesn't fit. Let's do something different. And so I think a lot of people were upset by how long that played out.
And in fact, 2 of the other 2 candidates for the planning board came forward and said, I'm running for planning board because I'm unhappy. I want to preserve the neighborhoods. I want to keep
Exactly
Chelmsford
right.
like Chelmsford.
Exactly right. So in the two debates, both John Sousa and Doreen Dessler made that argument in the debates that this is, one of the reasons that drove them to run for the planning board, and this is how they felt about that project, or even projects like that were just too big, and obviously too big, and disturbing the neighborhoods. Let's not do that. So that was part of their campaign promises, if you will.
I want to remind everybody that we are just sort of having a general discussion here until the tallies start coming in. We have 11 precincts to keep track of in 3 different voting places here in town. We have spotters, if you will, at each of those 3 places, and that are going to be feeding us information as quickly as we can get it to you. And none of the precincts have reported yet, so we'll just keep tabs on that. The point here, I think, is that okay, people are unhappy, right, with this notion of development, and yet in the pre and post-pandemic time period, Chelmsford had a lot of occupancy in its businesses, in its commercial buildings, and that was, an empty building doesn't really get you very much in terms of taxes, and so there has to be a balance, I guess, between keeping the town the way it is. We're hardly bucolic. We're a pretty good-sized town of 35,000 or so. And on the other hand, keeping vitality coming in by bringing in business to make sure that the tax base is there.
So the question is, what kind of business? In town meeting last fall, we passed an article which limited the size of buildings that could be used for distribution centers. And that means, you have a very rapid turnaround of whatever goes into the building and back out of the building, like Amazon might do, as opposed to a building that would be a warehouse. And the distribution center problem was, accentuated because people didn't want that large amount of turnover truck traffic going all day long. A warehouse, you get trucks going in, things are stored, they take them out, they leave, but it's not continuous. So we passed a limitation on how big those buildings could be.
And so, of course, there were other races that were decided today. There was a school committee vote. There were 2 candidates for 2 seats. The moderator, John Curlin, who's been at the helm for the last few years.
I actually didn't. I forgot that John was running again, and I'm glad he ran unopposed. I helped him run his first campaign for moderator, and John's been an excellent moderator. I can't say enough about him. He's got the appropriate level of sense of humor and yet understanding how to move things forward.
He can be firm when he needs to.
He can certainly be firm. He's been firm with me.
Board of Health, 1 candidate for the 1 position. Library trustees, 3 people running for those 3 seats. Cemetery Commission, 1 for 1, and then the town meeting reps. Interestingly, one of the people running for town for the planning board is John Sousa, and if that name is familiar to you, it's because he has served as the finance director for town for many, many years. I think 15 is the number I think I heard him say, and there's no reason he can't be both the finance director and elected to the planning board.
I'm pretty sure the limitation is you can't hold 2 elected offices at the same time. So he's on the Cemetery Commission right now, and he said at the second debate that if he's elected to the planning board, he will step down from the Cemetery Commission. But coincidentally, his wife is running for the open seat in the Cemetery Commission, so there'll be a Sousa there one way or the other.
But that's not the open seat that would be vacated by John.
No, that would be another open seat.
Got it.
One thing I want to talk a little bit more about, Kelly, is the town meeting reps, because back in 1989, when my wife and I first ran for town meeting reps, it was because they were putting a very large condominium complex on Route 110, Courtyard. And one of the problems we had with that complex, and there was a second reason why we ran, was that they were going to build a septic treatment plant in the back of the facility and put 55,000 gallons of treated waste into the brook every day. That was a little bit high for me, and the brook goes into the Merrimack River goes to the ocean, so it was the Army Corps of Engineers who had the final say on that. And they weren't happy with it either. And that's why we have a sewer pipe going all the way down 110 from that courtyard condominium complex to the center of town. Now it's been a very quiet complex. Used to be a drive-in movie theater there.
Right, right.
And when I first bought my house, I didn't realize when you take the speakers off your car and put them back on the post, if you have 50 or 100 speakers still turned up, you can hear it half a mile away. So when there weren't any leaves on the trees, you could not only see the movie, you could hear the movie looking out your back window on the second floor.
Okay, so we have our first results from precincts 1 and 5, and we're going to show those, try to show you those results on the screen, but we have them here, and we're actually getting in precinct 2 also. For the select board race, it is a fairly close contest between Ken Lefebvre, who's the incumbent, and Aaron Drew. There are 4 candidates here. Ken and Aaron, also Charles or Chuck Mooney, and Rodney Cleaves. And although Rod and Chuck are not in the top tier right now, it has been, or was up until this last precinct 2 came in, fairly close between Ken and Aaron Drew. We haven't really spoken about the qualifications of these candidates, but Aaron has been on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
For 3 or 4 years.
For 3 or 4 years, right? Which is it's a thankless job, I'm sure. As is select board, it's very, very important. So that race, it's obviously not, we're not anywhere near complete yet, but at the moment, Ken Lefebvre has 406 votes, Aaron 337, Rod Cleaves and Chuck Mooney each with 33. On the planning board side, interestingly, the incumbent at the moment, Mike Rasbeck, is trailing the 2 contenders. John Souza is running away with the count, at least in the first 3 precincts, with 543. And as you can see there on the screen, Dorian Deschler has 313, and Mike is not too far behind with 286. So we'll have to watch that carefully and see how that goes.
So John's a very well-known person around town. He's done an absolutely fabulous job on finances. You see him at every town meeting. He goes up and presents financial information. It's very clear and much to my liking, very simple. So you can understand what he's trying to say, and then he sits down.
Right.
And so people appreciate the clarity, the simplicity, and don't stretch it out with any more information than you need to give the town meeting. So I'm not surprised that he's leading, because he's, again, a well-known name around town, and he definitely wants to serve on the planning board. He made that clear in both debates. Right.
And so now that we have a total of 4 precincts having reported, 1, 2, 5, and 11. That ordering in the planning board has switched a little bit. Mike is now in second place. John Souza still a fairly comfortable lead. And in the select board, it's Ken Lefebvre with 611 and Aaron Drew with 554. Often a candidate will have a sort of pocket of strength among the precincts, and I know they've been scrambled recently, so we don't remember who's where anymore.
Numbers and where geographically they're located.
But Mike just got a big boost from precinct 11, which is mine. That's in South Chelmsford. I'm trying to remember whether Mike actually lives there or not. He lives at, I can look this up actually, he lives on High Street. So that's.
Oh yes, that's down near where I live.
Yeah.
So that's in South Chelmsford.
Right. Okay, so we're waiting for more results. We've got precinct 7 coming in now, and the planning board race is not changing. The select board race is looking closer than maybe
closer than I thought it would be. To be honest with you, and again, Ken is the incumbent, so I expected a very strong showing from him. But now we're seeing a very, very strong showing from Aaron, and not strong showings from either of the other 2 candidates. So I think if people actually saw the debates, that may be a contributing factor to that. But again, as we said before, when you're incumbent, you have a lot of strength in that incumbency, because they know your name, and unless they can find a reason why you haven't been doing your job, they're probably going to vote for you.
Right.
And so I've been through many elections. I ran all of Bill Dalton's campaigns. He served for 5 terms on the select board, Board of Selectmen at the time. My wife served 6 terms on the school committee. Naturally, I ran all those campaigns. So you see the same dynamics year in and year out.
Well, just to interrupt for a second, with Precinct 10 having reported in, Aaron Drew has now leapfrogged a little bit ahead of Ken Lefebvre in the total vote count with 760 to his 709. And, you raised a good point. While these results are trickling in, as little as 5 years ago, voters could depend on the Chelmsford Independent, the newspaper,
Right.
and at least 2 debates, sometimes 3.
Well advertised, by the way.
Well advertised.
And these 2 debates were not.
And closely watched as a way to familiarize themselves with the candidates in a fairly neutral and comprehensive way. And those don't exist anymore.
And
At least the debates weren't televised live.
Right.
In part because we didn't find out about them. No one knew. You didn't know.
Exactly. I found out, somebody said, we got 2 debates. And I said, when? Where?
Right.
And they were last week. So I went to both of them. And, they were interesting. They did show some differences between the candidates. But, in previous years, they were much bigger events and well advertised. So let this be a lesson to the people that put on debates. Let's think about it a little bit earlier in the election season and set up those dates, times, and places. The Republican debate was held in the school administration building, and not a lot of seats there.
And not exactly a place where even people know where to go.
No, exactly. It's got a secret entrance in the back of the building.
Should make it mandatory that they go into the Chelmsford Center for the Arts.
That would be interesting. But for the time being, the police station works fairly well. And when there have been some very good debates, there have been some with standing room only in the police station,
Right.
which would be excellent. But you have to get the word out. Before we get too far down and these things, come to some level of conclusion, the reason why people should run for town meeting rep is because, number one, it's going to help your town. If you like living in Chelmsford, you really ought to take a look at what it's going to take to help the town, become stronger, more stable, less taxes, more efficiently run. You need to be able to vote on those issues at town meeting that we do.
As you were
every year.
pointing out, those issues aren't decided by the select board or the planning board or the finance committee. It is the town meeting reps that cast the votes.
As I told you a little bit earlier, I was up and looking at some ballot samples from Amherst, New Hampshire, because a friend of mine from work was running for the school committee. He was on what they have a Ways and Means committee up there that makes decisions on, how the finances should be for the town. So they made recommendations on a lot of the proposals. That town must have had 30 items on the ballot. And as I read through the ballot, I said, how does anybody know what that means? They had little ditties below them, but in order to there's no debate, there was no extensive documentation that was available on the ballot. And I would hate to go through that, so it made me a big fan of town meeting here in Chelmsford, that we can actually sit and talk about these important issues.
Well, and not just town meeting, but representative town meeting.
Yes.
The anecdote that I tell is I have a sister-in-law who lives in Sudbury, and they had a really contentious development, a 40B, one of these high-density projects coming in, and the developer had a choice of 2 lots. One was near the center of town, and one was out near the edge of town in the more well-to-do portion. And so there was a kind of a NIMBY thing going on. The different factions wanted it elsewhere. And they had open town meeting debate on this. 2,500 people showed up. And it's open town meeting. So you have to let anybody who wants, it went on for hours and hours.
That's uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable.
I was at those before we set up our town meeting in 1989.
Well, I'm here to tell you that there are now only 3 precincts that have not reported in, and so we'll wait for those. And it's a very close race for the select board. Only 70 votes separate Aaron Drew, who's currently in the lead, and Ken Lefebvre, who is in second place. Rodney Cleaves and Charles Mooney are trailing quite a bit farther back. Meanwhile, on the planning board side, it's still close. John Sousa clearly in the lead.
Clearly
and still close with Doreen Drescher and Michael Racebeck, the incumbent.
There's 110 votes difference there, so
Right.
Mike could be in good position here, but the select board is going to be a very close race.
Right.
And 3 positions can flip those numbers very easily.
Very easily. And in fact, we saw that happen with Precinct 10, where Aaron Drew drew a lot more, yes, more than twice as many.
One of us was going to fall into that trap sometime during this evening.
That's right. And so we'll have to wait for those last votes to come in from precincts 8, 6, 8, 3, 6, and 8. Is that the senior center? Is that where those precincts are?
You know, we should have brought a map.
We should have.
We should have brought them. Make a note of that.
I know. For next
year,
time.
Bring a map so we know where these precincts
Right,
are.
with a stick that we can point to. We'll have it here behind us.
Which is better than using magic markers on the screen back
Right,
here.
right. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that there isn't more competition for the school committee seat. As I recall, there was one. Was it there that one school committee member stepped back and is not running again, or was not running again, or was it just that there's only one open seat?
I'm not sure. And the reason why I'm not sure is because there's been very little controversy in the schools.
Right.
You know, there have been some issues that have been taken up with the school administrators, superintendent, but they've been resolved so quickly you'd never even know there were issues. So again, I have a number of grandchildren that are going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are going to the Chelmsford school systems, and they have no issues. And I'm constantly checking their homework and other things. So they're learning well. The teachers seem to be handling them well, and I haven't heard of any Christmas issues.
Oh,
or
very
issues.
different than as recently as, say, 10 years ago.
Oh, yes.
When the schools were a flashpoint, really, for a lot of the.
Well, we had Byam School with that Christmas store that they had in the Byam School and everything there. And that's when Bill O'Reilly came to town.
Right.
I got to meet Jesse Waters, and I spent probably an hour and a half talking to the guy. Explain to him there's no real problem here. So
There's no there there.
Yeah, there's no there there. And he was a very younger but very nice person to speak
Well,
to.
and you see that reflected in town meeting, in the sense that coming up, we will be voting. This Springtown meeting is when we approve the budget for the coming fiscal year, and we're talking about more than $100 million in taxpayer funds being spent. And I remember a time when the debate over that and line items and can we take from here and move to there would take hours.
Right.
And now both of those budgets, the town administration budget and the school budget and the Neshoba budget, which is a third major number, are pretty perfunctory, at least compared to years past.
The Neshoba budget, the issue with that is people have learned over the years that there's not much you can do about it. It is what it is. The only thing you can do is say no, which causes other problems because it's a number of towns that have to agree on it. And there's no value in saying no. And on top of that, Neshoba does a very good job teaching students. I mean, I have friends who are on the Neshoba school committee, the representatives from Chelmsford, and they speak very highly of the curriculum. We have people that go there that we know that speak very highly of the curriculum, how it's managed. The facilities are great. I'm dying to go over there and have lunch sometime or dinner when they cook meals. So it'll be fun to see how that goes through again when town meeting deals with it. But I don't think that'll be an issue at all. And it's good to hear from the superintendent over there what the status is, of Neshoba.
Let's see. So I'm getting some information here. Info from the printouts. Total votes by precinct. Okay.
Were you looking for the percentage of people?
Yes, we're trying to get it.
How many votes do we have and how many showed up?
Yes. Well, anyway, we're trying to get that. We're trying to get a sense of how many people have voted in this election. My sense, Glenn's sense, is that turnout has been light for all the reasons we've been talking about. Not a lot of contested races, not a lot of discord in the community, no tax overrides.
Except for Riverneck Road.
Well, that's
Yeah.
right, but that's not specifically on the ballot, although it's reflected in the race for.
You will see in the alternate to the planning board, Chris Lavallee, who did some fabulous research on the issues around Riverneck Road, ran for an alternative position on the planning board, and he's the only one. So he's going to be there, and he will have a say when one of the planning board members can't vote, he can vote.
Yes, yes. And so, this happens every year. We have this election, and I don't know why it is that more people don't find it their civic duty to vote.
It's.
Is it
I was
generational? Is
Well,
it-
we're kind of older than a lot of the people that may be serving as town meeting reps. But you know, when I grew up, my parents used to take me when they voted. You know, when I was just a kid, 10, 11, 12. So I figured voting was something that you would always do. It's just you do it. You know, and when you do it, and I grew up in Arlington, which was a town very much like ours, representative town meeting. They had a lot of issues to deal with, and they did. You know, and it was contentious and well debated, and I saw that, you know, there's some merit to being able to discuss issues like that, because you shake out the bad stuff,
Right.
and you support the good stuff, because people have to literally say why they like it or why they dislike it, and if it doesn't make any sense, then you neglect that and you vote the way that does make sense. So that's a very important part of it.
We have one more precinct having chipped in here, Precinct 3, and it hasn't really changed the ordering. Aaron Drew retains a very slight lead of about 60 votes, 65 votes over Ken Lefebvre. And on the planning board side, John Souza continues to cruise to a...
Yeah, it's no question.
No question that he will be on the planning board. And there's a little more space between Mike Racebeck, the incumbent, and Doreen Deschler, sorry.
Yep.
I think Fran Drescher is stuck in my head. I'm sorry.
Actress, yes.
Yes. But in any case, we're waiting for these last two precincts to come in. Remember, these are unofficial votes. It doesn't include like absentee ballots and so forth. And I'm not sure why my computer just went dead, but it did. We'll have to figure that out.
Well, don't they put in the absentee ballots before they roll up the total?
Maybe they do.
Did you plug in your computer before you came over?
I did. Oh, well, my computer decided to reboot. So, there we go.
Ah,
It just went to sleep. It just
mine does the same thing.
not
No, I think this is a very, very strong showing by Aaron Drew, to be honest with you.
Yes.
You know, she's met a lot of people. She's gone to a lot of events. She made herself very visible. You know, and to be honest with you, I think the people that were concerned about the Riverneck Road project came out to support her.
Right.
You know, and one of the things that she mentioned at the debates or after the debate was she was wondering why the select board didn't take at least an opinion position on something that crucial to the town. You know, she said the select board are leaders of the town, and when you've got this giant project going in that disturbs part of the neighborhoods in the town, shouldn't they say something?
Right.
Well, it's entirely up to them, right?
So we have someone here that's showing up to join us here, John Souza, and as soon as we can get him mic'd up and rolled around here,
I will roll
Glenn,
over.
why don't you
Yeah.
roll over here and
Well, figuratively roll over.
figuratively, and we'll take just a moment here. I want to remind you that this is live, coming to you from the Chelmsford Telemedia Studios at Parker School, and we're giving you this as it comes to us, not officially from the.
We have one precinct out now,
We have,
Kelly?
that's right. We're down to our last precinct, and boy, it's a squeaker. John B. Souza Jr. We only
official name.
That's right. We only recently learned that you're a junior.
Kelly actually thought it was your son running for office.
Well, you're clearly going to be on the planning board, and congratulations.
Thank you very much,
We
Kelly and Glenn.
we were talking about one of the reasons that you were compelled to run for the planning board. It was the Riverneck Road project. It's something you go by every day. You want to give us a little of the backstory there?
Sure, the more I looked at that project, having grown up there, I spent 57 years in one part of town, and it's probably a little unusual in today's world, but I just knew that was the wrong project for the wrong site. And, you know, a central theme of my campaign has been protecting Chelmsford neighborhoods. And it's not just a slogan. I firmly believe that the way we advance Chelmsford is we redevelop existing commercial industrial areas in a way that's appropriate. But destroying a neighborhood is not the way to advance this town. And I want to thank all my supporters and friends that came out and supported me in this effort.
Well, obviously, you're a well-known and to a great degree trusted voice in our lives here as the finance director for the town, you're allowed to be on the planning board, that elected position, and have your job at the same time.
Yes, and I am, and I appreciate everyone's trust that they've had in me all these years, and I can tell them, everyone that voted for me today, I appreciate your support and your trust, and I will work for you for the next 3 years to make sure that Chelmsford has appropriate development and appropriate zoning.
Actually, I know why you really ran, because in your job as the finance director, we only see you twice a year at the town meetings. Now we're going to get a chance to see you every other week or so.
On television.
On television.
So my family's going to see even less of me, basically. Yeah.
I want to repeat a comment I made to Kelly earlier, because other people have told it to me. I have observed this. When you get up to speak at town meeting, you've got numbers to deal with. They're kind of complex, but you make it very clear when you deliver those numbers. You make it simple to understand. Even I can understand it, and then you sit down. You've said what's important, and people get it. Occasionally they'll ask you questions, but that clarity and simplicity is a big benefit to the town. So people knew who you were. So they weren't expecting any kind of, wild guy to go into the planning board. Somebody that's got a very solid background, can think through items, can explain them, which is very important when you're on the planning board. Like, why are we doing this? Have we asked the right questions of the developers? So I think that was a big boon to your candidacy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
It's, I've learned over the years, never speak in acronyms, try to be clear, and if people can understand
And
what
you
you're
do.
saying, you'll,
Yeah.
you
Otherwise, you
communicate
just
your
have to
message.
keep saying it until they do, and that could take a long time.
That's right.
So, it looks like you're going to be joined, at least in this election, by Mike Resbeck, who we've only got one precinct left, and
And
Mike,
that's not enough to overcome that vote differential.
Doreen Deschler really had a strong case. Like you, she was concerned about what she was seeing in town. She wanted to preserve the neighborhoods. Mike has been on the planning board for a number of years now, and as he pointed out, one of the reasons he felt compelled to run again was that he kind of has the corporate memory, and can, I would not put words in his mouth, but like being a steadying influence on the way things are going.
Yeah, congratulations to Mike on his re-election. I know he's served the town for many years in that capacity, so he will bring a lot of experience back to that board for sure.
Now, one of the things that we were talking about before is that there's a lot of a big push with Lisa Maroney and the economic development to try to get businesses to come into town. Do you see, aside from the Riverneck project, do you see any large projects looming that people can look forward to hearing about?
I know, things she's doing, she's working very hard on the 129 corridor, and you just saw, I know Pressed Cafe was a long time in coming, but I think everybody that's visited that business has thought it was, that they have a great menu, great value for the money.
Let's do some more of those.
Yeah, so hopefully that will be the catalyst to bring some more of restaurants to that area.
Right. Yeah. And of course, that was one of the hopes for the overlay district in along that corridor there, is to make it a little bit more vibrant.
Yes, the business amenity overlay district seems to be working, and anything we can do to enhance that area so it's not just all legacy office buildings.
Right. Then we've got the center of town, that hopefully they'll open up a steakhouse there sometime soon. Because, I like fish, and I go to Nobo's very, very often for Oriental food. But a steakhouse right next to Fishbones would be great. So when we put the brewery in across the street, you can just,
Yeah, there's a lot of
get a
exciting
few
things.
and walk right across the street and get something to eat.
A lot of exciting things going on in this.
Well,
subject.
I ate breakfast this morning in the center of town, and with the sort of apartment complexes and the condo complexes, that provides the kind of foot traffic that those downtown
They need it,
businesses
right.
really need and are striving for. And so maybe there is a new revitalization going there. I know
That'd be great.
there has been proposals for development in town that the planning board did not like. People did not like buildings that were too tall for the space and so forth. But there's still some.
Speaking of planning board issues, the planning board should just speak to the builder of that new apartment complex that's going in next to the Gulf Station, and tell them, do not paint the colors of the buildings that are down on 110 near Hunt Road. Those colors look like some kind of a preschool or something. Make it fit the atmosphere of the center of town. It's more subdued colors, not red, orange, and blue.
Right. Well,
Unless
you-
you want to look
You're
in front
close
of
to
the
the
gas
historic
station.
district too, so, you know, you're,
Well, that
may
would
not
be
be
good.
in, you know.
Actually, I'm thinking back to the, it's been roughly 12 years or so now that Win Stanley Properties came in and renovated the Chelmsford Plaza.
Yes, yeah.
And that was a success. I mean, with the help of the planning board guiding these businesses, I think often we get really good outcomes for the town. All right, so it looks like we have now all of the precincts reporting.
Now that is a close election.
And what we can show you is a very, very, very close race for the select board. As it stands now, and these numbers are unofficial but close, Aaron Drew has narrowly defeated Ken LaFave, the incumbent, for the select board race.
Which precinct just came in? I'm sorry, I
It
didn't
was,
catch
it was precinct 6
it. 6.
was the last to report in. And so, unfortunately for Rodney Cleaves and Charles Mooney, that they are very distant third and fourth place finishers. But boy, what a close race! What's your reaction? I mean, I'm kind of stunned.
You know, I want to say that there was a large Riverneck Road effect on this because of, you know, her support for the neighborhoods in Riverneck Road, and undoubtedly went out and got votes to support her. She presented herself well, and she seemed very experienced on issues that pertain to the town, like the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the fact that she was, I think I got this right, she was involved in import work, going through compliance issues with importers, which is a complex subject.
Right.
Sam Chase can tell you about that.
Well, that's right, and if she can handle that, a select board is perhaps something tangibly addressable.
This is a very unusual ending. Two good candidates, Ken and Aaron, were outstanding candidates, but to have a race this close against an incumbent and having the incumbent not win is a big deal.
Right. And so, John, before we let you go, we have town meeting coming up.
Very soon.
Very soon. Any hints you want to give us on what we're going to see that night?
I think just you know, the budget, capital plan, some, there are a couple of zoning articles being amended. Just your basic stuff. No, I don't think there's anything highly controversial.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. You never know.
I mean, we have here, you know, if you tally these, it's something like 3,000 people voted, which is maybe 12-15%, something in that range in
Now,
terms
do
of.
you know how many voters we have in town? That's a number that doesn't come to mind.
Yeah, it escapes me. I know it's changed.
gonna
I
look
wanna
that
It's in
up.
low,
throw
it's
out
in
a
low
phone
double
number.
digits, but it's what you just said. You know, it's sort of going to be a normal, not really contentious town meeting, and I think that might have some bearing on these kinds of low voter turnouts. People are not unhappy in a substantial way.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me that people come out so strongly for state and national elections, but you know, you don't see all the millions of dollars in advertising, so people tend not to focus on the town ones, and these are important elections that actually affect them. So many issues, so close to
Absolutely
home,
right.
so-
And we were talking about that, why so many people are not running for town meeting rep. I mean, there's several precincts with 2 people running for 5 seats. I mean, we've got to figure out what to do about that. I mean, there will be people that show up and get elected by our other process.
I think we'll create a puppet town meeting slate, and we'll have a sort of deep state town meeting cabal. That
You don't
will-
mean like Cookie Monster and Kermit the Frog type puppets? Okay.
Anyway, John, congratulations, and
Thank you
we
so
look
much.
forward to seeing more of you than we have been.
Yeah,
and-
absolutely. I look forward to it. I'm looking forward to the task. I just wanted to say, if these numbers hold, congratulations to Erin Drew on her victory, and thank you to Ken LaFave for his service as a select board member.
Very tactfully put. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Don't
Thank you,
forget to
John.
leave us our microphone.
Yeah, Mike's going to need that.
So,
Congratulations, John.
Thank you, Ken.
again, we are coming to you live from Chelmsford Telemedia's offices on Graniteville Road, and we're going to be sitting down here with Mike Racebeck, the other planning board winner this evening. And Mike, welcome back. You're no stranger to this facility, I'm sure. You're no stranger to a lot of the people. You have been on the planning board for quite some time now. This is your.
This would be 14 years counting the associate
You
slide.
were an associate before that, too.
No, that was, I've had four terms, so that's 12
Okay,
years,
yeah.
and 2 years of associate.
Before or after?
Before.
Before, so it's
Yeah.
2 and then
2 and then 12,
12,
and then
that's 14.
here we go, another 3.
And you said at one point that one of the reasons that you were driven to run again was that you have this sort of long view of how everything has run, and you wanted to be able to continue to offer that.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you know, we've had in the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of turnover on there. I think there's some value to having a bit of experience on it. And as I've discovered, it takes quite a long time to learn how to do planning board well. It's not simple.
That's a fact, because occasionally when I listen to the planning board, I'd say, what are they talking about? But they know, so I have to do a little bit of research just to catch up.
Yeah,
You know?
it is complex.
How do you think we were talking to John about this, it was, the River Neck Road project was important to him in his decision to run.
Right.
How has this colored your job on the planning board and how?
Well, frankly, a lot of the activity surrounding River Neck made it a very difficult year. I don't think anybody would deny that. When you're dealing with things like a project like that on the planning board, what you have to do is look at the result. What was the result? The project's been withdrawn. Now, it may very well come back. They still own the land there, of course. And when it comes back, the proponents will have a lot of information about what can and can't fly. But I think we got a decent result. I noticed that the votes were down somewhat for me, and I think that reflects angst on the part of a lot of people about River Neck. But in fact, the result came out the way people wanted.
Right.
The interesting thing was, because as you know, I looked at that fairly closely, you've got a good builder there. I mean, they definitely know what they're doing, but this project was just too big for the
That's true. The other problem we have is the market is closing in on us on several fronts. Once upon a time, you could sell a lot of office space. You can't sell office space right now. Once upon a time, you could imagine large concentrations of housing. Well, the sewage moratorium's kind of done a job on that. I just read another article that said it looks like we're hitting a fairly hard stop now in the development of some of the biomedical things that we had kind of hoped we would get. I mean, we'd all love to have R&D and things like that in there. So I don't know.
So are we looking from the planning board perspective at more redevelopment than totally new things coming in?
It's been that way for quite some time.
Yeah.
That's why we put in the overlays, because we were dealing much more with redevelopment than first round development. There is almost no virgin.
Press Cafe turned out very well.
It did turn out very well.
So we need a
for
couple
good
more of
things.
those. That would be good.
We did do, and I hope we'll get them. I mean, it's not as if the planning board gets to choose what projects show up in front of it. I mean, we could, the planning board steers things a little bit. I mean, it can't dictate what's going to develop or how it's going to develop, but it can push things one way or another and use a little bit of influence, and that's really where the power lies.
I'm going to change directions a little bit. One of the things that I point with pride to here in town is that we have, through our housing authority, we've reached that magic 10% affordability rate that insulates us against 40B. That has to be a relief to you on the planning board, not having to deal with that.
Huge relief, although I must say that if the 40B gets in, planning board doesn't have very much to do with it.
That's right.
But
you still take the blame.
We still take the blame, of course. I mean, you need to have a designated blamee in town, and it will serve that.
I don't look at the planning board like that.
No.
It's just not.
But quite seriously, we worry about that, and we've tried hard to help development along so that we at least made the 10%. We're a little bit close. I wouldn't mind seeing another percent.
Are we at risk of losing that 10% threshold?
You could. I mean, it's not going to happen next month.
Yeah,
but
because the more housing you put in, if you don't put in the appropriate quotient of low-income housing in there, you could slip below the line.
The project, the West Campus project helped a lot with the piece that they cut out there for affordable. We have to keep our eye on it. You can never take your eye off that ball.
How about the new condos that are going in the center next to the Gulf Station?
I don't think there's an awful lot of affordable in that. I think we took money in lieu of, but to be perfectly honest, I'd have to go back and take a look at the record and see what we did.
Well, I hope that doesn't kick us over the edge.
No, it won't kick us over the edge. We're really careful about that.
So Kelly, we just had something stuck on the television monitor up
Oh.
there. That's how many voters we have in town.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Yep. And if you do the numbers that you were looking at there, you say about 3,000 voters turned out.
Right.
Ooh, that's 12%?
We were almost wagering whether we'd hit double digits or not.
Yeah,
but-
we
I
hit
think we
double
might have
digits.
just barely slipped into the double-digit column, and that's, that is disappointing. So
Well-
I said to some people, what we ought to have is some kind of a financial issue on the ballot every year.
There are countries in Europe where you get fined if you don't vote.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. If you don't vote, your taxes go up. Oh, that's kind of fine.
Well, they go up anyway.
Yeah, I
you
know.
know,
So that maybe
it's-
that's not bad enough.
So is there an agenda of projects coming down the line that you can maybe tip?
Not that I know very much about at this point. We got through a couple of substantial ones this last round. River Neck was one that did not succeed. There's some stuff on Apollo Drive that did. There is more on the way, but I don't know of any.
What's the
particular
status of the brewery? Did that come before you at all?
That didn't come before us. That wasn't
Okay.
that wasn't a matter for us. But tell the truth, I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Wait, a brewery?
A brewery, yes.
Yeah, it's not the first thing you think about when you're from Chelmsford is I've got a brewery in the center of town. That just doesn't register, but it will.
Yeah.
It will. It will. I mean, once upon a time, I jokingly suggested that maybe we ought to have a beer pub overlay district.
Right.
Zoning bylaws.
But they do very well. I work in Cambridge, and there's one a couple blocks down from where I work. And when you really have some tough decisions going on at
Yeah,
work, you
that's
have
what
to
you do.
meet off-site.
Which, Cambridge Brewing?
And figure it out. Lamplighter Brewery.
Oh, Lamplighter, yeah.
Yep.
There was some discussion during the campaign about the select board in particular trying to be sort of cohesive and unanimity, not necessarily in the votes, but all being on the same page. How is the planning board in that regard?
It's been a little rough this last year. I mean, I think people have noticed it. It's been brought about partly because there was so much controversy surrounding River Neck,
Right.
and then that generated people to think perhaps one-dimensionally about that project. So it has not made it easy, but I think we can. I think we can smooth it out.
Well, now you have John Souza to
John, I am
smooth the
so
waters.
glad.
Yeah, I'll smooth everything out.
Yeah, John it's really nice
Yeah,
to
he's a
have
good-
him
good candidate.
on the board.
Yep.
He's got institutional knowledge, particularly in the financial areas that we don't have a lot of on the planning board. And for the planning board to function really well, I mean, you need some engineering thought. You need some financial thought. You need all kinds of different skills, and he's bringing one that we haven't got a lot of right now. So it's going to be a big plus.
He's looking forward to it. You came in when he was still here,
Yeah.
but he's very much looking forward to joining you. On the
Well, I
planning
told
board.
him, call me up, and we'll have a long coffee break, and I'll tell him everything I can.
There you go. Well, congratulations again, and we look forward to seeing your pleasant, smiling face on future meetings of the planning board.
for
what you can do for your boring Wednesday nights.
And
Thank you very
14
much.
goes to 15, goes to 16,
yeah.
goes to 17.
Right.
Let me grab your mic here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
You're welcome. Congratulations again.
Right.
So we are here at Chelmsford Telemedia's studios. We have the results that you have been seeing on the board. I don't think, do we have any other, one more? I'm sorry? Oh, Aaron is coming. Okay, great.
We should wait.
We'll definitely find time to fill for that. I am. The seat's warmed up. It's always interesting to see how a new face on a board is going to change the character of that board. For example, in the case of the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, old
You can't-
habits
it's
die
hard to change.
The board will reconstitute and select their officers for the coming year almost immediately. That's right.
Yeah, I think that happens within just a couple days.
Right.
And maybe, I don't know whether Aaron knows when they're going to do that. It's changed over the years, but they want to reconstitute. So now we have 3 women on the select board.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that,
Well, I was trying to remember whether that's been the case before. I know
when Emily Antul was on the board, Virginia Timmons was on the board, and Pat was on
And
the
Pat,
board.
okay.
So they had 3 women at that point
Right.
in time, too.
What I would really like to see it. I was trying to reflect on this. I lived in East Chelmsford for a very long time.
Is that near here?
It's a southern, and I was trying to remember when the last time we had a East Chelmsfordian on the select board.
Oh, you do now.
That's right.
You do now.
Right.
Yeah, we've had a lot from, Pat's from South Chelmsford.
Right.
So we've had a lot of representatives from South Chelmsford on the
Right.
board. But, yeah. And Sheila Pichette was on the school committee, so she was a good member of the school committee.
Right. But goes back to Roger Blomgren, I think was.
Oh, Roger, of course.
Was
Of course.
an Eastie. So we haven't talked much about these other races.
Do we know anything about these other races?
Well, we actually we don't, although we assume that pretty much everyone who was running unopposed
Probably got elected.
Got in. Richard Day on the Board of Health has been in that position for a very long time.
Could be approaching 100 years by now. But, everybody knows Richard. He knows everything about the health issues in town, and he's more than willing to share. If you ask Richard a question about health issues in the town, you will get all you need to know.
Right.
So I do that sparingly over the years.
Right. This is one of those cases where.
Town clerk is saying too close to call.
All right. So because we just got word that the town clerk's office has said that this race is too close to call. We can't really declare anybody the winner. It's unofficial anyway. The numbers that we have. There are uncounted votes, and the votes that have been cast will have to be rechecked. The margin here is only it's basically
votes.
It's basically 1%.
Yep,
of
very,
the
very
votes
close.
cast.
I can't recall seeing, there probably has been, but I can't recall seeing one this close. I know when Bill Dalton ran the last time, he won by over 100 votes, but that's a lot more than what we're looking at right now.
Right. And so we'll have to wait for the official tally to come out. Of course, here at Chelmsford Telemedia, we will bring that to you, probably not this evening, but in the days ahead, we'll have some resolution on all this. The town clerk's office is a finely honed machine, and I'm sure that we'll get results as quickly as we possibly can. In the meantime, we will have to just wait and find out how that one seat will be resolved.
So one question I would have is, can we identify the nature of any votes that haven't been counted? Because my thought was when they get absentee ballots in, or people that vote prior to the election, they put those in the machines. I think it could be first before the regular.
Well,
votes.
mail-in ballots might be that is to say, when was the last date by which a mail-in ballot?
I don't know. That would be a good question.
That along with our map for next time.
Map and what happens to the absentee mail-in ballots, and what happens to people who went to town hall and voted early, because you can do that. I've done that in a couple of years when I knew I was making a business trip, and so it's we just have to find out, and it is that close.
Right.
It really is that close.
And I do hear somebody's voice, so that might be Aaron Drew. Yes? No? Okay. So I think what we're going to do then, ladies and gentlemen, is first of all, thank you for joining us this evening. Because it is too close to call, we are just going to stand pat with the results that we have here, and hope that they resolve quickly and to the satisfaction of you, the voting public. So I want to thank my co-host here, Glenn Thoren.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Kelly,
and
every year.
And we will see all of you at 3 weeks from now at town meeting. I'm Kelly Beatty for the staff and volunteers here at Chelmsford Telemedia, thanking you for joining us and bidding you a good night.